Coming in. So is the housing bill too big and bloated to be effective?
Here to talk about it is our Fox panel, which includes, of course, Scott Martin from AstorLLC.com. We're bringing in Gary Kaltbaum from GaryK.com, Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof, and once again, Joran Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute. Peter, you just heard the Republican congressman saying our plan is better than the Democrats. The Democrats, Barney Frank, saying our plan will work most. Which plan do you like?
Well, I don't like either of the plans. I mean, if you want to help home buyers, the best thing to do is let prices fall. Let real estate prices come down so housing is more affordable, so people don't have to borrow so much money to buy a home. What they're trying to do is artificially inflate home prices. If they're going to give people a tax credit, they're just going to force them to pay more money for their homes.
Gary Kaltbaum, we did have to remind our viewers this was the Republican. Republicans are usually the ones who have a reputation anyway of staying back and letting the market forces clear the inventory. In this case, it doesn't appear so.
Not these Republicans, my friend. Look, I'm going to agree with Peter. All this artificial help is only going to, stem the tide for the near term. If the market's going to want to go lower, it's going to go lower in spite of anything anybody does. I'm just amazed that when things were working well with market forces, hey, great, but when things didn't work well with market forces, let's socialize the losses and let government take care of everything. It is, for me, becoming insanity.
Joran, one of the representative's proposals that he just talked about, a one-time tax credit for home buyers, and the credit would be of 10% of the home purchase price up to $10,000. Not a way to stimulate this situation?
Well, I just think politicians need to stop trying to stimulate us. I think all they do is you can
exactly
take that
what do you mean?
Yes. I mean, I think they need to leave the market alone. I agree with Gary and with Peter. Let the market work this out. Prices come down, people will buy homes. What they're doing is creating enormous uncertainty now. A lot of buyers are going to wait now. They're going to sit on the sidelines and see how Congress plays this out. If the president vetoes it, doesn't veto it. If there are buyers in the market, you wouldn't want to buy now. You want to see if you're going to get subsidized by the government. Let's wait a few months and let Congress sort this out. It's nuts.
By the way, we should mention, Scott Martin, this is just crossing the wire right now. Consumer borrowing actually rose in March at the fastest pace in 4 months, more than double the increase of the previous month. Again, to the notion that, hey, the market has a way of clearing itself out.
Although it's all on credit cards. Strong borrowing on credit cards.
It is on credit cards, which I think you're going to see become of the stimulus checks, right, that people get.
That's right.
It's debt service, right? I mean, what does this stimulus check do for one's mortgage? Pay half of it for a month? I mean, again, and prices, again, are going to keep falling. They're going to have to.
And if we're going to clear out the inventory, we have to make sure that the people in the houses can stay in the houses. If they can't afford it long term, maybe you give them a 2-month or 3-month or even a 1-year reprieve.
It could be the same person 6 months down the road. Exactly. It could be the same person 6 months down the road. Let's also think about, what about the input costs for these new homes? These builders are facing all kinds of crazy costs now for building new homes, which makes them even more difficult.
We don't need to build any homes.
And by the way, they still are. I mean, you see building permits. I mean, there still are a lot of problems with building new homes as far as costs.
Go ahead, Gary.
If you keep bailing out people that maybe had bad behavior, you are inviting more bad behavior. If you're going to say, I'm going to let the mortgage principal come down, what's not to let everybody who's been paying stop paying because they can go to the banks, hey, lower my mortgage principal also.
And by
it just
the way,
makes absolutely no sense.
Buried deep in these proposals is this one: improve regulation, Peter Schiff, of government enterprises like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan. Improve it. I mean, you got to scrap it.
Yeah, well, of course they're doing the opposite, though. They're leashing, they're lightening up on the leash. They're letting them be more reckless. So, the problem with a lot of this credit card borrowing, people are borrowing money now because they're deeply in debt. They can't pay it back. None of these people are going to be able to pay back this credit card debt. And then they're going to talk about a bailout for people who are overexposing their credit cards.
Speaking of overspending, a cash infusion of millions to keep Hillary Clinton's campaign alive.
Hillary Clinton doubles up in her bid for the Democratic nomination. Money in politics next. At the pump, Rich Edson has the latest from inside the Beltway. Rich?
Hey, David and Liz. Well, as crude continues to spike and so do gas prices, we've had the president, the Speaker of the House, dueling proposals in the Senate. Everyone in Washington, D.C. is weighing on gas prices. Last week, Republicans in the Senate came out with their version, basically on the supply side, looking to drill a little bit more or drill at all in Anwar, drill a little bit more off more of the coast of our country, and of course make it easier to build and issue permits for oil refineries. Today, Senator Mitch McConnell hit the Senate floor, hit the Democrats on their bill, talked up his own. Here's what he said.
In fact, the general thrust of their plan is to increase taxes on energy companies, which would raise, not lower, gas prices. But, Mr. President, Republicans do have a plan to reduce gas prices over the long term by increasing our supply of energy and American energy and American jobs right here in our own country.
The Democrats offered their competing bill today. One of the centerpieces of that, a windfall profits tax on oil companies if they do not invest in refineries or renewable energy, among other things. David and Liz, back to you.
Rich, thanks very much. So we've got some viewer email on this, don't we?
Yeah, well, because everybody's saying, wait a minute, the government could have done something. We pulled this one out just to give people a perspective. Bill in Golden, Colorado was kind enough to write Liz and Dave at foxbusiness.com, and he writes, hi. Our politicians have squandered 7 years of an opportunity to get us off imported oil, and as usual, nothing is getting done. If we had an average fuel economy of 50 miles per gallon versus the current stupid 23 million miles per gallon, we could not have to import one single barrel of oil. Needless to say, we should have been building nuclear power plants and plug-in and hybrid cars in a crash program in the U.S. We have the technology. Our domestic car companies have ceded innovation to Japan. Once again, wake up, America. He makes some good points.
He's mad as hell, and he's not going to take it anymore. Yeah. So how much will gas prices have to rise before Americans really start to change their behavior?
So we bring in the Fox panel. They're also mad as hell. Tackling this one, Scott Martin from AstorLLC.com, Gary Kaltbaum from GaryK.com, Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof, and Yoron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute. Gary K., take it away.
Look, they've already changed. They've already changed how they think and what they're doing. First off, look at the charts of the casino stocks, the cruise lines, the airlines. They're all doing very poorly. And there's been a little poll out where last year 56% of all Americans were saying they planned on a summer vacation. This year, 16%. So changes are being made. One more note: 1 out of every 5 cars now is now compact, and there's just a ton of SUVs on the lot. So people are changing based on what's been going on.
We had a guy who was supporting Vegas yesterday, and he was saying, oh, no, it's immune. And we kept saying, it's not immune.
Business is going down in Vegas. I'm getting offers every day. They're lowering hotel room rates, all kinds of deals left and right.
99 cents dinners.
People are going to theme parks. We saw that in Disney.
That's in Europe, though, not here.
Speaking of Europe, what about the nuclear option? Are we going to see, it is true, France has 70% nuclear power. That's how they generate eventually, if they go to electric cars, they won't need oil.
Exactly. They won't. But, David, again, I don't think we're going to get there, because I think actually we're going to see there's going to be some sort of government intervention in this, I think, eventually. But I think the problem is, too, let's say oil prices or gas prices at the pump go to $5. There are a lot of people that still need to drive for their jobs. In the city of Chicago, I can take public transportation, right, if I don't want to buy a gallon of gas. There are a lot of people who just can't do it. It's part of the fabric of what they do, and they need to buy the gas. So that demand is going to be there, I think, no matter what.
Peter?
They're just going to cut back on other things. Yeah. But, the emailer is right to blame the government, but he's blaming it for the wrong reasons. Instead of sending those camera crews to gas stations, you should send them to the Fed and start talking about Ben Bernanke. So when are you going to stop printing money? The reason that gas prices are rising, and the main reason, is that central banks around the world are printing money. That's the only reason these prices are going up. But what's going to happen ultimately to really hurt the American consumer is the foreign central banks that have pegged their currencies to the dollar, they're going to cut the nonsense out. They're going to let their currencies rise. And then oil prices are going to fall in China. The Chinese are going to use a lot more, but they're going to go through the roof in America.
But you can't dismiss supply and demand entirely. In fact, today was one of those days when the dollar was strong, gold was down, but oil was up. There is some momentum in and of itself because of the worldwide demand for oil to spike to maybe 200.
Sure, but that doesn't explain the current increase. It doesn't explain $125 oil. The reason is, Peter's absolutely right. This is a consequence of 5 years of bad inflationary Fed policies.
But wait a minute, today the dollar was stronger and oil was still up.
That's one day.
You can't evaluate these things on a day-to-day basis. They don't match up on a day-to-day basis. But the long-term trend is for the dollar to depreciate, for purchasing power of the dollar to depreciate, and for oil prices to go up. Oil is going up because of inflation primarily. Now, there are also supply and demand issues, but those supply and demand issues without inflation would be leading to oil going from 20 to 40 maybe, but not to 125. And if Congress wants to do something, then again, the way to do to help is to get out of the way, not to talk about windfall profits taxes.
Word. Thanks, gang. More Fox Business ahead.
We're down 190 points for the Dow Jones Industrials. Much more ahead. Oil prices continue their seemingly relentless climb. Stocks much lower as a result. We had record prices today for crude, gasoline, heating oil. Unbelievable.
Time for our last licks from our Fox panel. Peter Schiff, how bad do you think it's going to get? And I don't just say, you know, we're going to the bottomless pit here, but how bad do you think it's going to get before it gets better?
You're talking about for the stock market or the economy?
When is oil going to turn around?
Well, I don't think it's going to turn around for Americans. I think at some point it's going to turn around for, let's say, the Chinese, because I think the Chinese government is going to allow their currency to appreciate dramatically, which will bring down the cost of oil for the Chinese. But unfortunately for Americans, the dollar has a long way to fall, and that means the price of everything, not just oil, but food. I think the next thing you're going to see it in apparel prices are going to shoot through the roof. The cost of living for every American is going to go up because of what we've done to our currency and what we've done to our economy. There's no way to avoid it.
Gary, we're now down 214 points. How much do you attribute the fall that we've seen today to higher energy prices?
I think it's a combination of two things. A, the market ran into major league long-term resistance on the upside, combined with this persistent move to the upside in oil. I got to tell you, when it was first 120, I thought it would go to 100. It went halfway and just straight shot back up. And I have to tell you very simply, nothing good happens if oil prices continue to go up. It is a huge tax on consumer, business, earnings for business, and the stock market itself.
But, Scott, you talk to Phil Flynn and Eric Boland, people who really know this, say every single time there is a movement like this in oil, it eventually comes down. It pops. It might take a couple of years. Even the guy from Goldman Sachs, Arjun Morty, the guy who 5 years ago said it would hit 100, now says 200. He says, hey, folks, there's a third phase coming. It's not going to come until 2012. But that's when oil is going to come down. So eventually it will come down. We just have to hold on till then.
Right. And then, I mean, $200 a barrel, Dave and Liz and Peter, I think you're going to be talking about different sources of energy, too. I mean, you look at some of these solar stocks.
Well, that's why it's going to come down. There's going to be so much
competition. There's going to be other stuff. There's going to be alternative energies. I mean, wind energy is another compelling area. I mean, it just costs a lot of money to get this stuff going.
But that other energy is going to get more expensive to produce, too. It's the money-losing value.
Yoron, is the cure for high prices that people just simply stop and you see the so-called demand destruction, meaning people just aren't going to drive anymore, they're not going to travel as much?
Well, to a large extent, yes, but that's not a good thing. That's not what we want. What we want is to solve the structural problems, and the structural problems are inflation and massive government intervention into these markets. And the U.S. economy, in a long-term sense, will not turn around until we cure the inflation problem, until we get government to shrink. I mean, we've got a $300 billion farm bill out there. We've got a $300 billion plus mortgage bailout bill. We've got windfall profit taxes being talked. If our viewers want to do something about it, write letters to your congressman to stop all this massive government spending that is only going to make it worse.
Beyond the debasing of the dollar that Peter and Yoron talk about, Gary K., we also have this coming from an emailer in Midland, Texas. No surprise, it's from Texas. The fastest way to resolve our energy crisis could be taken in November by voting against all members of Congress who are against increasing our petroleum reserves, whether by drilling offshore and in Anwar or developing coal. So, I mean, we could take different measures in Congress, whether it's increasing the number of nuclear plants we have, allowing for Anwar drilling, whatever, that may alleviate some of the problems we're under.
Well, that's a pretty darn good email. Look, I think it's about as psychotic as possible that we're on like a slow motion here to fix these situations. And all we're hearing is these little Band-Aids. Let's go after the oil companies, take money away from them. Yeah, that's going to help. The only way this is going to get fixed up over time is, to switch Paul Volcker for Bernanke, take out Bernanke, put in Volcker. And let me just say one thing about this inflation thing. As of 2 weeks ago, Ben Bernanke is saying inflation is anchored, so there's also a credibility problem here that he would actually say something as crazy as that when everything has been shooting to the roof.
Well, with apologies to our emailer from Midland, Texas, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett talked specifically about this because people ask them, what do you think of alternative energy or a situation with the high gas prices? And Scott, both of them use this word. It is asinine to continue to use anything that runs on hydrocarbons when we know it will eventually run out. You can, fight about drilling in Anwar all you want, but you're only sort of delaying the inevitable, right, and that solar is the way to go. Now, they're not investing in that right now because they don't understand it, and that they're very simple. They're the first to say people don't like us on Wall Street because we're simple, but they said it's asinine to run anything on hydrocarbons. We've got to develop the alternative vehicle.
Right, and then also by doing that, you're delaying, or I guess you're decreasing our reliance on other economies and other places to get the energy. At least we can rely on the sun, which we all have, or wind. But again, it just costs a lot of money to get that going. And until we have oil, say, going to 150, probably 200, I think the solar and the wind story just has not the emphasis behind it.
What about the nuclear story, Peter?
Well, we need nuclear power, but unfortunately, again, you're looking at the wrong issue. If we're debasing our money, all energy sources are going to be more expensive.
We're looking at that issue, too.
It's all going to have to
We're looking at that issue, too, but there are other issues besides that issue.
No, obviously, we should. I mean, I was investing in uranium stocks years ago because of the idea that, we're going to have more nuclear power, and the world was building more nuclear reactors. Despite that, but prices are all rising to reflect this insane monetary policy. That's what we have to talk about. We can't focus on prices. We have to focus on why they're rising.
We're on session lows today, right now, down about 220 points for the Dow Jones Industrials, and you've got a situation now where this is just feeding on itself.
It is, and it's hard to tell where the market's going to go tomorrow and in the next week. And going back to the nuclear story, we do need more nuclear power plants, and the only restraint on building more nukes is government regulations and government constraints. Get the government out of this, and the energy market will take care of itself. It's even at 120, carbon-based fuel is still the cheapest fuel out there. And if we just let the market work, yes, if prices go up, people will start investing. Venture capitalists will start investing in alternatives. The market will solve this situation out. But when government gets involved, we get a situation like ethanol, which is just a nutty market, which is causing massive food shortages. You get these incredible
even the United Nations agrees with you now on that. So that's got a lot of people against each other. But the fact is, even if we had a sensible policy at the Federal Reserve Board, according to Peter Schiff, we would still have supply and demand problems with oil, wouldn't we, Scott?
Well, that's why we need nukes.
It's a huge global economy. We've got a big global engine, chugging down the track right now. And so everybody's demanding oil. I mean, everybody says, oh, well, China's contracting. Well, what do they contract from? 10 to 8% growth. So obviously their demand from oil is not going crazy down the pipe. So, yeah, that's going to be pumping up price, too.
But they're also producing more oil. All this economic growth results in more oil being produced. The problem is it's being undermined by the monetary policy.
30 seconds,
yeah, but it's also being undermined.
Just hold on a second. We're about to get to the closing bell. So go ahead. You're on your final comment there.
It's also being undermined by restrictions, environmental restrictions on drilling in all these places that do have oil, off the coast of California, off the coast of Florida, and Anwar.
All right. Well, unfortunately, not only are we drilling down, but the Dow Jones is going down, way down. It's off at sessions low, but not by much. It was down 220. It's now down 213. It's looking to settle somewhere in there, clearly over that 200 range. The trading day, thankfully, has come to a close. A sigh of relief from traders.